Genji makes a lot of noise for a cyborg ninja, but it doesn't always have to be like that. Listen to the following sequence. It sounds like a pretty silent flank, but that couldn't be further from the truth. Let me show you what I mean. Unfortunately, first-person audio is extremely misleading. It makes sense for a game like Overwatch to lower the volume of your allies, so it's easier to hear important audio clues from the enemy, but that rule should not extend to your own character, as giving the player wrong information can only lead them to incorrect conclusions. For this reason, all sound comparisons in this video will be done with enemies to provide accurate metrics. There were some visual bugs in the workshop I used to record most of the footage, but they have no effect on the audio even if it may look like it. I tested everything again with a friend and got new footage for any faulty samples I had previously, so if an action makes no noise when it should do so, that's just buggy game behavior. With that out of the way, let's start with Genji's footsteps. Crouch walking provides pretty good noise suppression, but it isn't effective enough on its own. A successful flank will most likely require the use of louder sounds from other players to help hide your presence from the enemies. Also, crouching makes your character move 50% slower, so some players spam crouch instead of holding it to reduce this downside while being stealthy, but let's test if that really works. While this idea succeeds in being a little faster than just holding crouch, the amount of noise it makes is almost the same as walking normally with Genji, so it is a complete failure for him. To finish, let's compare the two crouching methods. Final verdict: crouch spamming is a trap for the cyborg ninja. Now let's talk about moving in place. Turning your camera to look around will make noise after a certain point due to a torso's rotation limit being met, forcing the legs to adjust into a new position to keep the body from feeling unnatural. Crouching makes this noise almost imperceptible, but it's still something to keep in mind if you're forced to hide amidst foes. Jumping is exactly as you would expect it to be, except when it isn't. Small variations on the second jump sound are fine for the most part, but the lack of any noise from time to time isn't. I tried to pinpoint the trigger for this bug, but didn't find anything consistent, unfortunately. And to make things worse, we haven't even talked about a really weird technique, which I will call Phantom Hop in this video. It consists of holding jump after walking off a ledge, causing your fall to be silent but forcing you to do a weird bounce that will make sound when making contact with the ground a second time, but with a lower volume than most landings since it has very little vertical velocity. This isn't actually useful for Genji, since he has to either use his double jump to hold the jump key down midair, or his dash, which will prevent him from doing anything else during the animation, but since it makes a lot of noise, it isn't useful for stealth. As if this wasn't weird enough already, if you perform this trick with a dash without having used double jump, the Phantom Hop will remove your double jump charge, even though you haven't jumped midair. I also did some testing with this in Overwatch 2 and guess what, it doesn't stop there. The trick seems to be nerfed in the new engine, making a jumping sound when you enter contact with the ground for the first time most of the time. But it will also act just like Overwatch 1 sometimes and only make noise on the second ground contact, except when you do it with Genji's dash, which will have both landings be completely silent for some reason. Moving on from the bug fiesta, Wallclimb brings some really interesting options for an experienced player. But before we get into that, let's talk about ledge grab. Differently from Wallclimb, it can be used infinitely without the need to touch the ground to refresh it after one use. It's worth noting that although wall climbing won't remove your ability to ledge grab, the opposite isn't true, and so ledge grabbing will burn your wall climb charge until you touch the ground again. This may sound bad at first, but it's actually to your benefit. If you have wall climb available and grab a ledge very high, instead of doing the usual animation that makes noise and locks you into a fixed motion until you are standing on that ledge, you'll perform a wall climb in thin air while moving forward since the game considers you to be ledge grabbing, resulting in a silent ledge grab by bypassing the usual animation for it. To finish things off, there is a trick I like to call a Walltap, which is basically just a very quick wall climb to gain vertical momentum without making much noise. First person is especially deceiving here, as it seems like it's a very easy technique to perform silently, when in reality the window you have to detach from the wall after touching it and make no sound is around 3 frames. Failure to execute it that fast isn't bad though, you can still reduce most of the noise from the climb with decent speed, and depending on how close to the ground you execute the wall tap, it can also drastically reduce the landing sound made, so it's a double win with different tiers of noise suppression depending on your movement prowess.